Hi, we're here at Kindred Spirits Retreat Center outside of Eugene, Oregon. And we have a special guest today, Peter Mount Shasta, who is from the Mount Shasta area. And he will be doing a retreat here March 23rd through the 25th. And just want to get to know him a little bit. So Peter, have you always been interested in spiritual things?
No, in fact, I was an atheist probably the first 20 years of my life.
Wow.
I grew up in a very materialistic suburb of New York City, and my friends' parents were the heads of multinational corporations, and I did some tests. I used to go to this church, and I noticed that the minister would say, let's pray for a member of our congregation, so-and-so who's in the hospital, and it seemed like invariably that person died. So I thought, if God doesn't hear the prayers of the minister, who's a professional at it, how can God hear my prayers? And so I really didn't give much thought. I didn't see any evidence of a God, and I prayed a number of times, and it didn't seem like those prayers were answered. So I went to college and was studying to be an aerospace engineer. And anyway, after college, I found myself living in New York City, and I started doing yoga just for my health. And I noticed from the very beginning, just even after the first asana, I felt energy in my body. And I'd never felt anything like that before. And I said, wow, there really is energy that seems to be separate from my body. There's more to my being than just the physical flesh form, that there really is some kind of energy flowing. And in fact, I felt so energized after that first hatha yoga session that I wanted to find out what this was about. And in fact, they had said, don't eat any breakfast. And I thought, how could I have energy to do all this physical work without eating breakfast? But here it was already noon, and I still wasn't hungry. In fact, I had more energy than when I started out. So I went right to a metaphysical bookstore, and I said, I want your best book on Eastern mysticism and on yoga. Mm-hmm. And I think they gave me Swami Vivekananda's book on Vedanta. And when I started to read that, it's like a light went on. And I continued with the hatha yoga. And in fact, one day I was doing the yoga, and in fact it was the corpse pose, which Swami Satchidananda said that's everybody's favorite pose. That's where you lie flat out on the floor. That was at the end of the yoga session. And I went into a state of expanded consciousness where there was no sense of I whatsoever. It was not me having the experience. It was just I was one with the universe, and everything was just this cosmic sound of Om and limitless light. And eventually I came back. Actually, what happened was the phone rang, and it was the wrong number. But that brought me back into my awareness of having a self that had had this experience. And I was very different after that, and I lived in a very rough neighborhood on the Lower East Side in New York, and people used to try to rob me all the time. And after this experience, people would come up to me with knives, and they'd get to be about 3 feet away from me, and it's like they bounced off of me. And I was just happy and smiling at everybody, and it seemed like I was carrying a very different energy then, and I felt this kind of euphoria lasted for about a week. And then not long after that, I heard Baba Ramdas interviewed, who was an associate of Timothy Leary at Harvard. And well, Ramdas's name was Richard Alpert. You've probably heard of him.
Right.
And I heard him interviewed, and it was just like, I said, I've got to go to India for some reason. And it seemed like all these teachings, these spiritual teachings, were coming from India. So I traveled overland through Europe and through Eastern Europe, Afghanistan, and eventually found myself in India. And not too long after that, actually connected with Ram Dass and with his guru, Neem Karoli Baba. And I traveled all around India and had many interesting experiences, met some really interesting people who could really do miraculous things. And in fact, there was one Swami, I had been craving fresh vegetables. It seemed like everywhere I went in India, I was just getting rice and chapatis, and I was craving spinach for some reason, cooked spinach. And one day, I was taken to this yogi who lived on a little peninsula in the Ganges River up by Rishikesh. And he was like almost completely naked, just wearing a loincloth. And there was only this young German couple that had taken me there. And with a smile on his face, he reached around behind his back like this and pulled out this huge bowl of spinach, steaming hot, smothered in ghee, which is melted butter, and he gave it to me. And I ate it, and immediately after that, I fell asleep, and I woke up, and he was just sort of smiling at me, and maybe he did something for me, I don't know, but to me it was a fascinating experience that he would fulfill that wish, and what cosmic significance that had, I don't know, but he was one of many beings I met that could do very interesting things. But when I left India, I pretty much had the feeling that there's no guru out there that's really going to give me what I need, that it's really inside of me. And that's the essence of what all the great teachers say anyway, that's inside of you. In fact, the word guru is G-U-R-U.
Oh, really?
Yeah, see, G-U-R-U, that's how you spell it. And that's what all the gurus are saying. Find out who you are, not who I am. So the last day that I was in Delhi, I went to a very fancy restaurant, and I was really mulling over in my mind this very question. It seems like I didn't really find a guru, and I was somewhat disappointed because Ram Dass had this amazing experience with his guru. He told him all about himself and all sorts of beautiful things. And I left this restaurant and I went out into the street, and there was this little street urchin that came up to me, and he handed me this book, and the name of the book was Be Your Own Guru. And I thought, wow, that's just exactly the conclusion I had come to, that the guru was within. So I left India feeling like I will never be back in India. I don't need to go there. And then I would say that I had another amazing experience when I returned back to the States. That
so tell us about how you ended up. You had a lot of travels in India. So how did you eventually end up at Mount Shasta, and how did you come to be called Peter Mount Shasta?
Well, there's sort of two separate experiences. One is like the first time I went to Mount Shasta, I was camped out on the mountain, and I was fasting for, I guess, about 5 days. And I woke up one morning as the sun hadn't come up yet, but it was light, and I heard somebody talking to me. And this had never happened to me before. I was not somebody that heard voices or even wanted to hear voices, but there was somebody talking to me. He seemed to know all about me, and I looked around. I couldn't see anybody. So I just lay there, sort of looking up at the pine trees over me and listening to this voice, and this person told me all about myself and started to tell me what my life was going to be like over the coming year. And I didn't like anything that this person was saying, and I argued with him. And it wasn't till a year later I found out this was Saint Germain. But he came to me just as a voice at this point, and he said that I was going to go back east, and that I would travel again to India. And I thought, I don't want to go back to India because I had gotten very sick the first time. And then he said I would sell my farm and that I would move to Mount Shasta. And this was a kind of just a sort of logging town then. And I saw no reason to move there. And then he said that I would change my name to the name of the mountain. And I said, Mount Shasta? And he said, yes. And I said, that's ridiculous. I refused to do that. I had a lot of friends that had taken Indian names or Sanskrit names, including Ramdas. And I thought, I have no interest in changing my name at all. But he said, well, you will. And I said, no, I won't. And he said, well, we shall see. And so I eventually left Mount Shasta, and over the next year, everything he said came to pass. Mm-hmm. And I found myself going back to India, visiting Satya Sai Baba, and it was Sai Baba who told me to meditate on I Am. And it was through the book, The Impersonal Life. I asked him, what should I meditate on? Because there were so many thousands of types of meditation that you could do, and I heard that he gave different people different types of meditation. So I asked him, what should I meditate on? And the moment I asked him that question, somebody came up with the book, The Impersonal Life, and put it in my hand, and it was underlined. It said, meditate on I Am. So I tried that, but not too much happened. It's kind of the corollary to Ramana Maharshi's statement, who are you? Uh-huh. If you ask, who am I, eventually you come up with I am. But not much happened, and I came back to the States, and then I found myself living in Berkeley, and went out to Muir Woods one day, and I felt pretty much that my time on earth was over. And I had lived with a yogi in the Himalayas that was a student of Babaji, and he was getting ready to leave his physical body. Mm-hmm. And that's something that a yogi can do, is leave their body consciously at will. So I thought this is something that I would do, because I no longer had any interest in just living for my ego or to acquire material things. So I said, I decided to try prayer one more time. I said, if there's anybody up there that hears me, please answer this prayer. And I was way out in the forest in these big redwood trees, and it was pouring rain, and I got inside this hollow tree to get out of the rain. Mm-hmm. And I was doing this Vipassana meditation where you have your eyes slightly open, but you are following the breath, just the in-breath and the out-breath, and it slows the mind down. And I was looking down at the forest floor, and I asked, if there's anybody up there that hears me, please answer this prayer, show me if I can leave the earth. And then I named all sorts of beings that had a high reputation, like Buddha and Jesus, uh-huh. And I'd heard of Saint Germain. And I think I called on also Muhammad and Babaji and Mary and every great being I could think of. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden 2 feet appeared in front of me. Wow. And if someone had walked through the woods, I would have heard twigs cracking and things like that. I would have heard somebody coming from a long distance away. But this person just appeared there, and I heard this voice that said, Peter, your prayer has been answered. And I looked up, and there was a young man about my own age, maybe a little bit older, wearing jeans. And I noticed, interesting, that even though it was pouring rain, he wasn't wet. But he said, he knew my name also. And he said, I am the part of the Godhead that has been sent to answer your prayer. And then he said, you can leave the earth if you want. You have finished enough of your earthly karma that you can leave the earth. And I have been sent to grant that wish. But before you give me your answer, I would like to show you something. And then he touched me in the center of the forehead, and the next thing I knew, I was outside my physical body, and I could look back and I could see the physical body still sitting there meditating, and I was in a more subtle body, finer body. And he put his arm around my shoulder, and the next thing I know, we were flying up over the earth. And we went to this beautiful realm where beings existed as balls of light. And those were it was called the Atman, which is in Sanskrit, it's like the permanent self. And that's what's represented in this picture, except if you just took the core light, and in the West we call it the I Am Presence or the permanent atom, and there are many other names for it, but it's the ball of light that is really the source of our being, or what we call the God Self. And that is a ball of light, basically, and all the colors are the wisdom that we have acquired through many lifetimes. And in this realm where these beings existed as balls of light, there was the most incredible feeling of joy and bliss. And I said, this is where I want to be. And he smiled, and then I heard this crying coming from someplace, and the crying got louder and louder, and I looked down, and there was the earth below my feet, this blue ball. And as I looked at it, I could just hear the suffering on the earth, and my heart went out, and I just felt this incredible compassion. And I said, I have to go back. I want to go back. I don't want to stay here. I have to go back and help people. And that was not a rational decision at all. It was just something that came totally from my heart. And he smiled and he said, you made the right choice. He said, now we'll be working close together. I have work for you. And the next thing I knew, I was back in my physical body inside this redwood tree, and he was standing in front of me, and he said, go to Mount Shasta. The first person that you meet there will tell you what to do next. And then he said, now I will show you who I really am. And he took a few steps back, and right in front of me, he turned into this master wearing a white robe. And he looked very familiar, and it wasn't till later I realized he was the master I'd seen in front of the book Unveiled Mysteries, known as Saint Germain. But he gradually just faded out until there was nobody there. And I felt as though I'd been hit by lightning. It was just my whole body was vibrating, and it was a tremendously exhilarating experience. And I got in my car, and I don't really remember driving the first few hours. And the next thing I knew, I was on my way to Mount Shasta around Red Bluff somewhere. And I pulled into the town of Mount Shasta, and in those days there were really very, very few spiritual seekers there. It was mostly a logging community. But there was a place called the Breakfast House, and I went in there, and a young guy that owned the health food store by the name of Stephen came up to me, and he said, you have to see this lady by the name of Pearl. And I said, I don't know who she is, but I was told to do whatever the first person I met told me to do. And he told me to go see Pearl, so he said, you can use the telephone in my store. So I called her up, and she said, come right up. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Call for an appointment, and the person says, come up right away. So I got to her door, and this sweet grandmotherly lady opened the door, and she said, I've been expecting you. And I said, expecting me? What do you mean? Nobody knew I was coming. She said, well, the Master Saint Germain came to me this morning and told me that he was sending somebody to see me. And then she asked me to sit down, and she said, what brought you here? So I told her the story of meeting this man in Muir Woods, and she said, well, who do you think that was? And of course she had a picture of Saint Germain on the wall behind her, and I recognized him, and I said, that was Saint Germain. And she said, exactly. And you have been brought here by Saint Germain to learn these I Am teachings. You know. So that was 1973. And I was put through many tests and trials learning those teachings.
Wow, that is
So-
an amazing story, Peter.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
Saint Germain brought you to Mount Shasta, and so I'm curious about the I Am teachings,
Mhm.
and what are those about?
Well, that's kind of the core reason that I'm here, and these are teachings really for the new age that we're moving into. And I don't even like to use the term new age anymore because it's kind of become a euphemism for multi-level marketing and things like that, you know.
Yeah.
But what it really means is the age we're moving into, where people get in touch with who they really are and don't give their power away to religious organizations or to channels or to, you know, mediums that want to intercede themselves between the individual and their God source.
Mm.
So this new age is one in which people recognize who they really are, that they are gods, that each of us is this I Am presence, each of us is a divine being. And as we bring that God consciousness into ourselves, we become Christ beings. And the essence of that is really hidden in the words I am. Because when you say I am, that is actually God speaking through you. That is the assertion of your own divinity at this point in space and time. And, you know, instead of thinking about it intellectually, if each person can just sit and be still, and you actually can first meditate on I, like what happens to your energy? What do you feel inside you if you go into your heart and just feel I? It connects you with this vertical stream of light that comes from your higher self down through the top of your head, and it's anchored in your heart. And all the ancient texts talk about your soul being anchored slightly to the right of the sternum. And they say there's like an etheric flame there. And you can feel it because, like if I say, who are you? You don't go, who, me? Or who, me? Why do you go here? Why do you say, who, me? That's because you feel the center of your being is right there. And that's because that divine flame, that consciousness is anchored in your physical body right there. It's like a little spark. And that's like sometimes like you may be walking along and you think you're going one place and suddenly you get this thing in the center of your chest that pulls you to go a different way. That's the guidance of the I Am presence. And that is one of the gifts of these great teachings and of the I Am, is that as you tune into that more and more, you can feel that guidance in your daily life. So you first tune into the I, and that's this great electronic current that comes in. It's like the father, fire, electronic will aspect. Then you tune into the Am, which is more like the feminine, magnetic love aspect that gives embodiment to the I aspect. So the two of them together, the I and then the Am, it's like actually what's represented originally by the cross. The cross is not actually meant to be like a crucifix.
Right.
With the crucifix, you have the horizontal arms much shorter than the vertical. And again, that's symbolic of how the feminine has sort of been downplayed. Mm-hmm. And it's come to mean suffering, or the crucifixion. But actually, originally, it represented the two forces working together, the feminine and the masculine, the electronic and the magnetic, or the sky and the earth, these two principles that are always united, always work together. So when you say I am, it's actually bringing together the Father, Mother, God principle, that instead of the type of spirituality where you say this is all an illusion, I want to go back to the source, this is actually bringing the spirit down into you, into the world, and being released as creative activity in the world through compassion, through love and compassion. So it's the working together of this electronic, magnetic, or the fire. Like every fire has light and it also has heat, these two aspects.
Could it also be considered like the human and the divine
Exactly.
aspects? Uh-huh.
Yeah, except I don't want to say that equate the human the feminine is human and
Right.
it's like, but it's all the spiritual teachings that I encountered up to meeting Pearl were very patriarchal, and it was all about escaping the illusion of thinking that this is all real, and of achieving detachment from it. And many of the great teachers in India were guys who would sit under a tree or whatever, or in front of a group, and they say, this is all an illusion. If you know who you are, there's no problems, and the goal of life is really to drop out of the illusion and get back to the state of oneness where nothing makes any difference, nothing can affect you, and you have no emotions, no feelings, it's all just seen as an illusion. But what I found is that we are here for a reason, actually. And many people can achieve a very advanced state of consciousness, but that they have bypassed certain lessons, certain emotions that they need to integrate. This human experience is very sacred, and rather than escape it, it's important to realize that there is a reason for us being here. And I see the I Am teachings are a way to bring this high spiritual consciousness into the earth, and to really be a creative person in daily life. Like in the illusion, that's what mastery is, and that's what I'm interested in pursuing and in teaching, is enabling people to be masters with these I Am teachings in their daily life, rather than to escape life.
So what are some of the concrete ways that the I Am teachings can really help all of us on not just our spiritual journey, but our holistic journey as humans in spiritual form?
Well, when you realize that by stilling the mind and going within into the heart, and you call forth that I Am, that whatever feeling and whatever thought that you connect with I Am is what you're going to bring into your life. So you can say, I am peace, I am love, I am compassion, I am being led to the perfect job, I am being led to the perfect mate. Whatever it is, once you release that, you have set God into action. So I hope that answers the question.
Well, hi, we're back here at Kindred Spirits Retreat Center, just outside of Eugene, Oregon. And we have our special guest, Peter Mount Shasta, here, just getting to know some of the I Am teachings and something about his spiritual journey. And we have these books of yours here, Peter. Could you tell us a little bit about how those came about?
Surely, I'd be happy. This one is I Am the Open Door. And these are a series of discourses by the Ascended Masters, where they actually appeared in visible, tangible form to me, which is quite different than normal channeling, where someone tries to get a message and may or may not be actually in tune to varying degrees with the being that they're trying to channel. With these discourses, I had no idea to channel at all or even write a book. And in fact, my teacher always stressed that the masters really didn't want us to go to channels because it makes people feel they're separate from their own I Am God presence, that they have to go to somebody else. And that's something more from the Piscean age, that we're separate from God and we need to go to somebody who's more in tune than we are to find out what God wants from us. And so the teachings that the masters are giving now is that we are all embodiments of the divine, and we have to give God credit for being able to contact us, as this being is all-powerful, all-present, and all-knowing, God can let us know what it is that we're supposed to do in a very natural way by just helping us to feel the presence within ourselves, that we feel just naturally what we're supposed to do. And the highest way to get guidance is really just to not to look at a flock of birds and interpret what direction they're flying as what we're supposed to do, or to have to throw rune stones, but just spontaneously to do the right thing because it feels right. So that's really how the guidance is coming forth now. And I think a lot of people, especially young people today, just know that if you just trust in my heart, I will do the right thing, even though it's very tempting sometimes to go to somebody else and saying, you tell me what to do. But we don't really need to do that. So I was very surprised when the masters appeared to me and gave me these discourses. And this happened at a point in my life when I had a big choice to make between following what I thought was my own path to personal happiness and serving the masters. And it's kind of a paradox, because I chose to serve the masters and I was rewarded with the highest experience of my life, because when these beings appeared, their energy was so intense that I was raised into their, what's called the Ascended Master Octave. It's like a dimension of incredible light and wisdom and power. And at one point, the first being that appeared in here was known as the Great Divine Director. And he raised me into the consciousness of my I Am Presence, the chart of which you see back here. Now, no artist can really do justice to something that is a multi-dimensional reality, but I could see in a complete 360-degree circle. It's like what you see with a fisheye lens on a camera. It was like spherical vision. So I was raised into the I Am Presence, which exists from 12 to 60 feet above every person. And this is what sometimes infants see when you bend over them to pick them up, and they look up and they don't look you in the eye so much, they look up above you and they're going, wow, like they're seeing your higher self. Wow. And that's this beautiful rainbow body that they're seeing. So I was raised momentarily into that consciousness, so I could see this being standing next to me, I could see the entire neighborhood, and I could also see the paper that I was writing on. And that showed me what was possible, and that only lasted a brief amount of time, but I was forever different after that experience. And then every day for about 10 days, a different master would appear, sometimes two in one day. And I thought that from then on I would just be in their presence, that I would be in that reality at all times, that I would be able to talk to them and ask them any questions. And then it stopped, and for the next year it was like it was very difficult to come back and just be a normal human being again on the earth and not have those divine beings there at every moment. But you know, the next step was learning how to ground that energy and how to bring it into everyday life. So that's how this book came to be. I Am the Open Door. And the big problem was in how to punctuate it, because they sort of talked, when we normally talk, we don't talk in complete sentences. So I was left with these sentences that went for a couple of pages. So I had to go back and decide where to put in the periods and the semicolons and things like that. But anyway. Now this other book is more my personal autobiography. This is called Adventures of a Western Mystic, Apprentice to the Masters. And that just came out last year. It's a book I've been working on and off for about 30 years. So many people would ask me about the stories of these experiences that I had. I would just write them down whenever I got a chance, and so I finally, with the help of some editors, put them all together into this book. But this shows how the I Am teachings that are given in the discourse is how they're applied in daily life. And a lot of it has to do with just learning to get guidance, just to trust in the God presence in your heart, and to follow through on it, even though your mind is telling you it'd be crazy to do that. You know? So As an example, there was one instance where I was living out in the desert on the far side of Mount Shasta, and I kept getting this feeling about going to Europe. And I had no plans to go to Europe, and I had very little money, very little savings, but the feeling kept getting stronger and stronger to go to Europe. And one day I couldn't resist it any longer. In fact, I had a dream one night, and I saw a map of Europe, and I saw a little red line connecting London, Paris, Zurich, Madrid, and then back to Paris again. And I knew that was the plan where I was supposed to go. Huh. So I bought the ticket to London, and I followed through on it, and I just spent a few days in each of those cities. And in the last part of the trip, I found myself in Madrid, and I stayed I checked in to a cheap hotel, because at the airport they had a booking agent that said, we'll find you a hotel. Even though inside I kept hearing, stay at the Ritz, which was the fanciest hotel in Madrid. It's where Hemingway stayed when he was there, and famous bullfighters stayed there, and it was quite well known. And I knew people that had tried to stay there, and they couldn't get reservations there even a year in advance. And so I thought there would be no chance of my just showing up and getting to stay there. And on top of that, I thought it would be extremely expensive. But I checked into this cheap hotel, and I just had this feeling I'm in the wrong place. And so I changed rooms, and it still had this feeling like it's too loud, there's something wrong here. So I checked out, and which was very difficult to, I just checked in and then tell them I'm sorry, I can't stay here. But I just kept saying, I told you, go to the Ritz. And I knew this was Saint Germain telling me to go there. So I walked into the Ritz, which was the most elegant hotel I had ever seen. And I walked up to the desk, and the man at the desk just put down the phone. He said, may I help you? And I said, I'd like a room. And he said, we just had a cancellation. We'll give you this beautiful, we didn't say beautiful, it turned out to be extremely beautiful room with gold-plated doorknobs in the bathroom, and marble fixtures and crystal chandelier. And he said, and we'll give you a special price, it's only $25. And so I ended up staying at this beautiful hotel. I was following my guidance, even though my mind was saying, you're never going to get a room there. I just followed through, and everything opened up for me. And then I had an experience while staying there that was absolutely transcendent, because I always do these affirmations when I travel. I am in service to the Great White Brotherhood. I am here to serve the masters, to help bring about the divine plan on this planet. And one day after breakfast, I noticed that they were clearing people out of the hotel, and I was sitting in a beautiful chair in the living room, or in the lobby. It wasn't in the lobby, it was kind of a special room they had that was like a living room. And then these people came in, it looked like Secret Service. They all had these like mics on their lapels, and they were talking to each other, and they were scanning the furniture with these devices to check for, bombs and things like that. And then a red carpet was rolled out, and but they never asked me to move. It was like I was invisible. I just sat there in this beautiful, elegant chair. And then after a while, there was I could tell there was a meeting going on in the room at the end of the hall. And after a bit, there was a lot of flash bulbs went off, and a big commotion. And then I started seeing these various world leaders coming out of this room, walking down the red carpet right past me. And I blessed them all as they went by. I said, I did these I am affirmations. I am the presence blessing you, and I am the presence blessing you. And then the man who's now the King of Spain walked by. He was then Prince Juan Carlos. And he was in his military uniform, and he walked arm in arm with this other man. And this man, nobody had given any indication that they saw me sitting there, except this one young man in a military uniform winked at me, kind of went as we walked by. And I thought, that was really strange, So after all these leaders left, I walked out I followed them out, walked out the red carpet, and I stood on the steps of the hotel, and I saw the entire hotel was surrounded by the Guardia Civil, which was like the military police, and there were all these limos there with flags of the countries of the world. there were all sorts of soldiers there. The whole hotel was surrounded, and I was the only hotel guest that had been allowed to stay. And I was standing up there on the front steps of the hotel watching all this. And then gradually, the guests were allowed to come back into the hotel, and then I heard very clearly inside, leave. Return home now to Mount Shasta. So I went to the concierge and said, I would like you to make a reservation for me to go to the airport. And he said, you're never going to get a flight out of here. All the flights are booked for 2 weeks. And I said, I don't know, I just feel I have to go. And he said, well, it's up to you. And he called a taxi, and I was taken to the airport. And at the airport, I was told the same thing, all the flights are booked. And I said, I know that I'm supposed to be on this next plane. And she said, well, you sit over there. And at the last minute, she came running up to me, and she said, I don't know how this happened, but we have a seat for you. You have to run for the plane.
Oh, my gosh.
And anyway, I got back to Mount Shasta, and I went to see Pearl, and she said, by any chance, did you see a man with a military uniform who winked at you? And I said, yes. And she said, that was the Ascended Master Saint Germain. He has just shown me that he was there. And you were sent to that location, which was one of the formative meetings for the Common Market, that they were having a meeting about how these various countries were to integrate into the European Union. And that I was sent there to invoke the Master's energy into that meeting. So that's kind of one of the stories that's in this book, is how to actually be of service to the Masters and how to be a light worker on the planet, how to get your guidance and how to bring it into daily life and how to apply it in real life situations. Which sort of brings up the subject of this retreat that we're going to have at Kindred Spirits and after the equinox, March 23rd through 25th, which will help people learn to apply these teachings. So it's kind of like this is not separate from the teachings of enlightenment, but it's enlightenment in action. So or meditation in action, which will really help people in their daily lives, how to function in the world of duality, instead of just sitting in a cave and being in a state of sort of enlightened detachment. And part of the retreat will focus on actually stilling the mind and purifying the emotions. So it's an amazing number of people walking around don't even know what they're feeling, but they use spirituality to sort of escape from their feelings or from their emotions. So this will work on actually purifying the emotions and then learning to actually feel the God presence in the heart. That the I am presence, even though it exists in a higher dimension above us, we can be aware of that presence as it's anchored in our hearts and learn to expand that love and that light that we have within us. And then in that state of absorption in the divine within us, we can plant a suggestion by saying, I am whatever it is I wish to create. Because whatever our attention is upon is what we become. So a lot of times we have this negative programming, and that sort of redirects the energy into some negative channels, and we have these repetitive actions that we do that are based on fear or anger or things like that, or the consciousness of lack. And through this type of meditation, we can become aware of that negative programming and reprogram ourselves to think in positive ways where we call that energy forth. So, I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like it really is something that can be very useful for all of us. And so what are an example of some of the actual maybe exercises, meditations that you'll be bringing to the retreat?
Well, the first one would be, I would say, it uses the ancient technique of vipassana, which is the method that Buddha used to become enlightened. And that's using the breath, which is a mantra that's going all the time. It's amazing that these powerful, simple techniques are there all the time, and the mind wants to go to something complicated or think that it needs to sit at the feet of a guru to get some very advanced teaching, or to hear like the inner name of some master and what color he's wearing and where his temple is, or learn a secret mantra or something like that. But all the time that breath is there, but just by observing it, the in-breath and the out-breath, it stills the mind. And as we start to get calm, then we can really start to feel the presence of who we really are, that we are not the mind, and we are not the body, we are not our emotions, we are a presence and a consciousness that is beyond all of these. And through this technique, we start to become aware of that. And in that stillness, then, we learn to expand that consciousness, expand that light, and then to work with it. That light is there, and it's just asking us to be of service. So instead of just creating a whole lot of things from our ego, like some teachings are saying, through the use of affirmations and through your willpower, you can bring material things into your life, or you can create certain situations. This combines also the attitude of surrender to the divine, like surrender to your higher self. So what you create is in harmony with the divine plan. So we're not just creating a lot of useless objects in our lives that we have to later figure out what to do with. So this is really how to bring a sort of practical spirituality into daily life, that instead of being enlightened in a cave, we can be enlightened in action in our daily lives and in relationship also. So, the purpose is how to exist in the duality, but as being conscious of the unity, Great. So, in fact, you can start your day by saying, tuning into this I am presence, and saying, I am going before me today, arranging everything perfectly according to the divine plan, and see to it that I am in harmony with that. And I am being reminded throughout this day to maintain this harmony. And I am observing whatever condition I am involved in so that I can see what I need to work on. So it's not, I think it's very important that we realize that we're here in this world of duality for a reason, and that we're not just here to escape from it as fast as possible, because we were in this state of unity and oneness and bliss at one time, and we chose consciously to come into the world of duality. Mm-hmm. So rather than saying, okay, it's all an illusion, I don't want to be here anymore, I want to go back to that world of bliss, we can say, look, I chose to be here, I've created this situation, it's actually, to realize the situation that we're in is actually perfect for what we came here to learn. So how can I be in this situation and learn what the situation has to teach me? And how can I learn to feel compassion? Because I think compassion is one of the main lessons that we've come here to learn, that we can really only learn in the world of duality.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we only learn that by being in action, really. Even the Dalai Lama said he knows all these great Buddhist practices for generating compassion, but what helps him the most is when he thinks of his mother, that his mother was this incredibly compassionate being, raised, I think, like 10 children, would get up at 3 in the morning and get water and cook for everybody, and she still had time to do her spiritual practices and time to do planetary service, to pray for other people. So for him to generate compassion, he thinks of the example of his mother, and that is like really far more powerful for him than to do all of these secret practices. So, we can all use the situation that we're in to generate compassion and understanding, things like that.
Yeah, so. It's wonderful the way you've put it, that we're not just here, to escape the world, but we're here to be in it and make it a better world and bring more divine light into it. wonderful.
That's why the meditation practice that I give, we do with the eyes open. Because people tend to, like when they close the eyes, sometimes they like drift off almost into a state of self-hypnosis or avoidance, or go off into a world where they're not really aware of themselves anymore. And that kind of meditation has its place, but in this kind of meditation, the eyes are slightly open, although focused more toward the floor. But that keeps you centered in the here and now. So the end result of this is to really learn to be present in daily life. And this is the kind of meditation we can do anywhere, on a bus or sitting in a cafe, something like that. In fact, I've developed what I call the latte meditation that you can do sitting in a cafe with your tea or coffee or whatever it is, and no one knows you're doing it. But you can observe your breath, looking down at the top of the table. You can feel the stillness, and then you can realize, I am a divine being, I am the presence of God right here and now, and this light and this love from my heart is going out to everybody in this cafe and blessing them. And not only to the people in this cafe, but to the entire town that I'm in and to the entire earth. This is going forth. And I call on the presence of God to bring to me the people that I can help. And then suddenly somebody may come and say, may I sit down at your table? And you say, fine. And then you end up having this conversation and you find you're able to help them in some way. And it works like magic. It's
That's
beautiful.
Amazing.
So it's really, how to bring God into the daily situation. There's a great book, I Am book called The Magic Presence, written by Godfrey Ray King. And he talks about this, that each of us has this magic presence, which is really our own God self. And that through the I Am, we learn to bring that forth through us into daily life. So instead of escaping from here to go up to a higher realm, it's bringing that higher realm right down through us and making the earth a better place to be. So I hope that's answered some of your questions.
Oh, absolutely! Some wonderful, wonderful gems in there, and I was just curious: are there any other little gems of wisdom that you feel guided to share with us as we close our interview here?
Well, I was going to say the key that opens all doors is gratitude. Gratitude, even to the pain and the suffering, because it's all here to teach us something. And I would like to express my gratitude in that vein to both you and Bruce and to everyone here at Kindred Spirits for inviting me to come here and do this retreat and for holding this beautiful space here, because I know that the work you're doing here is a blessing to many people, and I feel gratitude for that.
Wonderful.
I'm sure many other people will also.
Thank you. Yes, and we so look forward to your coming and being with us during the retreat, March 23rd through the 25th, and it's been wonderful having you here and experiencing your journey and your story.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, again, I look forward to seeing all of those of you who feel the call to be here. May God, the I Am Presence, bless every one of you.